I am joined by Doug Lesmerises, who covers the Buckeyes for the Cleveland Plain Dealer. And Doug, I know it's been a very busy 24 hours, 36 hours for you as all of this has unfolded. Tressel's resignation, and then the Sports Illustrated article, and now news about Terrell Pryor this morning. Are you surprised, in light of all of that, that the university has remained silent today?
There's so much bad news out there for Ohio State right now. I'm a little surprised they haven't gotten Luke Fickell out in front of the media to say, I'm the new head coach of this program, and we're moving forward. I mean, he's a sharp guy, but he's not a guy that anybody really outside of Buckeye Nation knows much about. And until you can put a face on the program, it's almost like, for the moment, they don't have a head coach. We know Luke Fickell is the interim coach for the next year, but people need to know who Luke Fickell is. So if I was an Ohio State spot, I know they might be gun shy after the March 8th press conference that we all realized didn't go very well for them. I would get Luke Fickell out there and try, from their standpoint, to move this forward, because if not, all that's left to talk about is the stuff that is not very good for them right now.
Absolutely. And that Sports Illustrated article, what was your reaction to what we learned in that?
Certainly the problem for Ohio State would be if the NCAA could prove what it said in that story, that the scope of this tattoo for memorabilia situation is much larger than the NCAA knows of right now. That's where Ohio State would fear words like lack of institutional control, a failure to monitor, these bigger NCAA violations that would be affecting the program and not just someone like Jim Tressel. So again, the media often leads the way in some of these NCAA things, but the NCAA is not going to act based on a media report. They'll have to come in, investigate, and if they can prove some of those things, that's where Ohio State, I think, that's what they would be fearing at this point out of that story.
And now an investigation continues for the NCAA and Ohio State into Terrell Pryor. What is ahead for him as these two investigations continue?
Certainly there is starting to be an opinion that Terrell Pryor may have played his last game for Ohio State. That's only an opinion right now. But again, when you start having another investigation, we know that the NCAA talked to all these players back in December when the first allegations came out. And it's sort of like with Jim Tressel. If they talked to him then and he didn't give a complete story, we saw what happened when Jim Tressel wasn't completely truthful with the NCAA. If that's the situation Terrell Pryor would be in, if they come back and would find more things in their investigation, again, that's where you start talking about more trouble for Terrell Pryor. At this point, we don't know anything for sure beyond the 5-game suspension. But the point of all of this is, despite the fact that Ohio State lost its head coach yesterday, we're far from through with this situation for the Buckeyes.
In light of that, would those NCAA hearings set for August now perhaps be pushed back a little bit so that the NCAA has time to do a further investigation?
I mean, I certainly think that's a possibility. I know they can always, I think, start sort of a separate investigation where maybe they would go forward with what they have for August 12th and then they put this in another box and do something with that later, or they can fold it all into one. I think it would depend what they find and how it all links together. But, in the end, we know the NCAA can move slowly sometimes, but I think all of us would agree you want to be complete rather than necessarily speedy. I'm sure Ohio State wants to get it over with, but, they don't want to come back and have to deal with this multiple times. You want to get this taken care of. So I don't know that right now, but certainly that would be a potential possibility.
And as we talk about August, that obviously leads us right into football season. And for Luke Fickell, very unknown territory for him in his first head coaching job. What is the challenge that awaits him not only on the field, but in this community?
Well, for Luke Fickell, the last time we heard from him, it was the day before spring practice started when he was named the interim coach for the 5-game suspension for Tressel. And he was saying this is Coach Tressel's team. I'm just going to sort of be the shepherd for these 5 games, but it's still his team. That's not the case anymore. This is now Luke Fickell's team. He's kind of in a tough spot. It's going to be tough, I think, on recruiting and things like that when you have this interim tag, but I think he just has to not think of it that way. As far as he knows, this is his team. It's going to be a year-long audition in a lot of ways, but he's worried about the 2011 Buckeyes, and I don't know what's going to happen down the line. I think if they don't get hit with NCAA sanctions that are too severe, there will be good candidates out there for them for 2012 and beyond. But, Luke Fickell, I think, is a very good guy with his relationships in the community, his respect on the team, to sort of be the continuity in this chaotic situation, I think Luke Fickell is a very good guy for that job. And at this point, that's all he can worry about, and they just have to take one step at a time. And that's why I think Luke Fickell should be out here talking to you instead of having me talk to you, because I think people want to hear that right now. They want somebody to say, we're still Ohio State. Eventually it's going to be okay. And the best person to say that right now is Luke Fickell.
What has fan reaction been like from your perspective as all of this has come down? We know how passionate Buckeye fans are.
Yeah, I mean, I think with all this stuff, there's always a divide. And I'll be curious a little bit going forward if there remains any kind of divide, because you certainly have fans who, they love the program. They love Ohio State. Regardless of the coaches, regardless of the players, they love the Buckeyes. That's the common theme. But then there are a lot of people, too, who, for good reason, became very attached to and very proud of and fond of Jim Tressel. And I think there are some people who are upset maybe with how things were handled today, the fact that he's not here anymore. And so some people are then angry at the program because their guy's not around anymore. So, I think it'll all come back together eventually. I mean, this has happened before. Unfortunately for Ohio State, they have as much experience with this as anybody, because coaches of this stature don't lose their jobs in this way. I mean, Jim Tressel and Woody Hayes almost stand alone in coaches who have achieved so much going out so quickly. So Ohio State got through it before. They will get through it again. But I do think right now there certainly are fans on both sides of the fence. Some are glad that this day finally came, and others are very upset about it.
Do you ever foresee a day where Jim Tressel would have a role with this university similar to what John Cooper and Earl Bruce do today?
It's an interesting question. I mean, his legacy, I think, is a very interesting question. I'm working on a story on that right now, and where he'll be down the line, what he'll do with the rest of his life, how he'll be perceived. I thought it was interesting with his most recent contract that they had sort of set up this position for him to be able to have a faculty position and move right into that he clearly wanted to remain around the university after he was done coaching. I think that he's going to step back for a while. I could see him getting back into coaching maybe at a small school level someday. I've mentioned, just as a complete guess, if he ever coached at Baldwin-Wallace, his alma mater, where his dad Lee was a legendary coach, getting back to a little bit more of a simple situation. But John Cooper's still around here. Earl Bruce is still around here. Jim Tressel had offices for him at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So I do think someday Jim Tressel will be around Ohio State, and he will have a legacy here. But in some ways, it's sort of hard to think about that right now.
All right, Doug Lesmerises from the Cleveland Plain Dealer, thank you so much.